Well, hello everybody, and I think this is one of the most requested videos that we have going right now on Hardware Canucks, because this and this, or these and these, are the Phanteks D30. And you might have seen a bunch of our coverage from CES about these fans. And why are they so special? Well, basically, what Phanteks has right now is the T30, which is their ultimate performance fan, and it is the ultimate performance fan right now on the market. And they have the M25, which is a pretty decent RGB fan. So what they're doing with the D30 is they're taking all of the lessons from the T30, shoving in a bunch of RGB, adding a couple of really cool features, and you get this fan. So basically what you get is a fan that's meant to do literally everything. And they come with a heck of a price too. So $30 US for a single fan and $90 for a triple pack. So sure, they're not the most expensive RGB fans out there, but they are extremely high in price. Either way, they're designed to go up against fans like the AL120 V2 that actually won our last fan roundup. So like those uni fans, the D30s can be daisy chained together in a way that completely eliminates a lot of the cable management hassle of traditional fans. And I think I'm gonna have to explain this a little bit more in depth, because while Lian Li's uni fans come with a very simple slide to connect approach, these D30s come with a literal Lego kit worth of little parts, but that doesn't actually mean that it's bad. So it's actually really well done. Let me go through this whole kit of parts with you. First of all, Phanteks instructions are perfectly clear with highlights where you need them. Well done, Phanteks. But I also wanted to talk about every single one of these little components. So first of all, there are caps for the centers and the ends to cover the screw holes and give you a perfectly clean look. Then there are bridge connectors with pogo pins that carry the power and the RGB signal from one fan to another. Finally, there's the same type of caps without pogo pins that will allow you to simply get a very, very clean look on the edge of every single fan. And then there are the end caps. But what I wanted to talk about first is the power connector, because this is a little bit of a tricky thing. So what you might think is this power connector can go on either end of these fans with the pads. So these pads are your power pads, but they can't. One of these has a little notch in it and the other one does not. Every single one of them that has a notch in it will fit your incoming power. So what you do is you just sort of clip it in like so, bring it in, and it clips in place. The other one without the notch cannot be used for power input. Then in order to connect the two fans together, what you would do is you would use these little guides here to go from one to another. Sorry, I flipped that. Sort of like pop them together like that. They are now well connected, but what you have to do is you actually have to link them together. So you take your pogo pin connector, you put it on the pads, and you simply press down. Now you have two fans that are partially connected. On the other side, all you would have to do here is use this blanking plate, pop it here, and hope that it's aligned. There it is. And that's it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put on the rest of these components and show you how easy this is. So there you go. And what you have is a completely clean looking fan setup with absolutely no screw holes shown or any links in between the fans. This is absolutely beautiful. Anyways, with everything installed like that, I guess we should switch over to an actual system so I can explain to you the two different models that Phanteks has here. So a forwards model, a traditional model, and a reverse model. The forwards model, mounted on the radiator you see here, is designed just like a regular fan, so with the blades drawing in air and pushing it through the radiator fins. The other side of this fan has the typical motor hub supports, which don't affect the overall clean look since they're hidden by the radiator. But those supports really do mess up the look when fans are mounted for intake. So like when they're pulling air into a case. That's when this reverse model comes into the equation. You still get that super clean look since the blades are essentially flipped into a, well, a reverse airflow configuration. Other than the obvious point of needing to be very careful when ordering these fans, there's a few other trade-offs with the reverse model. First of all, if you have a tempered glass front window, these supports are going to be right in your face. Luckily, in most situations, they're going to be hidden by the front dust filters, like on the Fractal case I'm using here. The other issue is its specs take a hit with lower static pressure and airflow numbers versus the standard model. It's not by much, but they might have a negative effect in real-world testing. Then again, you're probably buying the D30 for looks, not necessarily insane performance, right? And let's be honest here, even for somebody who doesn't like RGB in their builds, that would be me, these look absolutely stunning. Here, let me show you something. I'm just gonna cycle through a couple of colors here. So look at this. Red, perfect saturation. Green, perfect saturation. Blue, perfect saturation. A lot of that is due to the fact that Phanteks is actually using a pure white fan blade on these. So they basically reflect the light a lot better than a lot of the other fans on the market right now that use semi-transparent blades. Plus, they're illuminated by an outer diffuse halo versus the LEDs that are mounted to the fan hub like so many other fans. Those are accented by small linear strips around the outer circumference too. There's a few more subtle strips on each side that sort of tie everything together and give the entire setup a sort of like Knight Rider feel. So these are some amazing looking fans. I mean, let me go through a couple more of these things. Purple, white, which isn't really white, but close enough. Nice little glow around. Anyways, I could go on and on about this, but you know what else is amazing? This new case from Antec.
Antec is back, baby, with the impressive Performance One full tower capable of extreme cooling right out of the box. Delivered by this aggressive but more importantly airflow friendly front panel with three 140mm fans and a 120 at the back for competitive placement in my temperature stack. Enjoy this discrete temperature monitoring for your hardware and a fully open interior for air cooling or water cooling components. The new Performance One FD by Antec. It seems the legends are back. Check it out below.
Anyways, the D30s obviously have a lot of in-your-face lighting, and the way you control it is unfortunately pretty rudimentary. Giving you an all-or-nothing approach by relying on whatever comes with your motherboard might not be exactly the greatest idea, because that software is a lot of the times borderline useless. So there's no individual zone or fan-specific color options, leading the D30 to lose big time to Lian Li's fans in the customization department, since those use the proprietary L-Connect software that is very adaptable. So on one hand, you have a very much plug-and-play approach, provided your motherboard software behaves. On the other hand, with Lian Li's Unifans, you do have more of a complicated, sort of hub-centric approach, but that does give you a lot more adaptability. And all of those unique connectors and bucket loads of RGB come with one more trade-off, and that's fan size. While these are technically 120mm fans, their actual blades are just 114mm wide, which doesn't seem to impact their paper specs all that much, but it does reduce their airflow footprint on radiators and heatsinks specifically. Phanteks says they've compensated for that with a 30mm thickness, which should technically boost static pressure while lowering noise like it did on the T30. But did that approach actually work? In order to partially find out, what we're going to do is we're going to have you listen for yourself. So we're going to put both the forwards and reverse models through various fan speeds so you can actually hear what they sound like at different output levels. with that out of the way, let us get right into testing. Starting off with unrestricted performance, so there's nothing between the fan and our measuring tools. Let's start off by putting most of the RGB fans we've already tested on here. Then let's also add the Phanteks T30. Just note I'm cutting off the T30's line since it completely messes with the data presentation. Yes, it's that powerful and that loud. Anyways, there's a few other fans you need to pay attention to here. The M25 was the best performing Phanteks RGB fan, while the AL120 V2 is pretty much a direct competitor to the D30. And in forwards mode, the D30 gets respectable results, which places it comfortably above most of the other RGB fans I've tested, but it's far, far from the best. Both the EK Loop and Mobius 120p RGB get better results, but the AL120 V2 just demolishes it across every decibel level. Meanwhile, the reverse mode fan starts off sorta okay, but then it falls back to being the worst performing RGB fan we've ever tested. It also gets a fair bit louder than the standard flow version, despite running at exactly the same maximum RPM. So obviously, reversing the fan blades like this comes with some acoustic sacrifices. But let's check out how these perform against every other fan we've tested. So here, the non-RGB models are in gray, while those with RGB are in teal. And at first glance, this doesn't look great, but you also have to remember the D30s are running at just 2000 RPM, while some of the others here are in the 2300 and higher range. The only issue for Phanteks is that it's the same speed as the AL120 V2, and that fan gets quite a bit better results. Cutting things back to a constant 39 decibels really does turn things on its head. On one hand, the D30 in forwards config becomes a heck of a lot more competitive, though it still can't run with the AL120 V2. On the other hand, the reverse mode setup has some of the worst numbers we've ever seen. Well, based on those numbers alone, it's pretty obvious that the D30 in forwards config is a pretty decent case fan when there's no restriction involved. On the other hand, the D30 in the reverse configuration, it's only all about looks. But now what happens when we actually place a radiator, so a more restrictive surface, between the fans and our measuring equipment? Well, let's do the same thing as before and add all the fans along with the T30, then see where the AL120 V2 and M25 sit. And even here, the forwards airflow D30 isn't all that competitive relative to its price. But check this out, the reverse model ends up delivering pretty similar results this time, though neither of these fans is all that great at all. I mean, they're beaten clean by the Thermalright C12C, which costs less for a triple pack than Phanteks charges for a single fan. Even when compared against all the other fans we've tested, the D30 in both its configurations performs solidly in the middle to rear of the pack. The weird thing is the reverse version suddenly jumps out ahead here, and that had me scratching my head big time. But according to Phanteks, it's because at higher speeds at least, the fan motor supports are on the opposite side of the radiator, and that allows for a bit more airflow to go directly through the fins from the fan blades. Narrow that down to 39 decibels and it's obvious the D30 was laser targeted at the original AL120, not the new V2 that was launched a few months ago. The revised version ups performance in a pretty significant way, and that spells a bit of trouble for Phanteks. So the D30s aren't bad performers by any stretch of the imagination, and yet they aren't the greatest either, at least not when looking exclusively at airflow. But what happens when they're installed in a working system and we start looking at actual temperatures? Well, let's start with an AIO and go from there. With all the fans running at full speed, the results are pretty mind-blowing, since the D30 in its reverse configuration actually ends up getting better results than the standard layout. And those numbers actually match the AL120 V2. But temperatures only tell half the story, so let's overlay noise onto those, and the D30 becomes a lot more impressive. The forwards direction model is one of the quietest RGB fans we've tested when running at full tilt, but the reverse model does end up being noticeably louder. And when we normalize noise at 36 decibels, the D30s really start to shine. Simply put, if you're looking for fans that have an amazing noise to performance ratio, these should be on your short list. Moving on to performance on a U12S, and the results are pretty similar to the AIO, with the reverse edging out the normal D30 by a few degrees, on its way to becoming one of the best RGB focused fans we've tested. Don't kid yourself though, that regular D30 put down some pretty good results too, but was ultimately beaten by the AL120 V2 and even the much less expensive Phanteks M25. The similarities continue at 36 decibels, with both fans offering very good performance. Due to their low noise profile, they can actually run faster than some others at an identical decibel level, and that gives them a significant edge. Like I already said, the reverse one performs so well in most situations due to the location of its motor supports. But anyways, it's not like you want to use this model as a heatsink or radiator fan anyways, because frankly, when you mount it the way it's supposed to, it looks ridiculous with those motor mounts that I was talking about, because these things are going to be staring at you straight in the face. Anyways, when it comes to the D30, I think I need to talk to you guys a little bit more about this, because I'm completely on the fence about this fan. Obviously, the raw airflow numbers only tell a small part of the story, since in a real world scenario, when looking at actual temperature data, these are some of the better RGB fans around relative to the amount of noise they produce. But most people looking at something like the D30 don't have performance at the top of their wish lists. They care about how they look, and for that, these things are hard to beat. If you're looking for the god of RGB fans that does incredible RGB while getting ludicrous performance, this isn't it. Because there are a few small issues. With all those plastic bits, something's bound to break at some point, and a few pieces did break during our testing. Just be careful. Then there's the elephant in the room, the AL120 V2, which for a very similar price gets better performance, seems to be more widely available right now, and with Lian Li's software, it's a heck of a lot more controllable than the D30. So in the end, I think the discussion between the AL120 V2s, or any Unifan for that matter, and the Phanteks D30 is all going to come down to looks, not necessarily performance, because they do perform very closely to one another. And in that respect, I actually think personally the D30 does have an edge with its overall RGB presentation. It looks absolutely stunning. You can see that Phanteks spent a ton of time on that alone, and there's of course some performance sacrifices that come with that. But I also want to know what you guys think. Would you pick one or the other? Why would you pick one or the other? I want to know in the comments below. Anyways, I'm Mike with Hardware Canucks, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good day, guys.